Hello, and welcome to another QX podcast. This is entitled Room to Grow, and it's one of a series of podcasts that QX are doing with individuals who are involved in the living sector. And today I'm delighted to have with us Peter Lynch. I've had the pleasure of meeting Peter at some events that we had done in London previously. Peter is the Chief People Officer of the Cardinal Group of companies. And out of his back window, you can see the delights of Denver, Colorado. I'm afraid he just got my study behind me, nothing quite so glamorous. But it's wonderful to have you here, Peter. Could I take this opportunity of asking you to introduce yourself? Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Philip, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be on that panel with you earlier this year. My name is Peter Lynch. At Cardinal Group Companies. Have been here about 6 years, and really my entire career, I've spent a lot at Fortune 500 bigger organizations, but I've really been focused on the intersection of how humans and innovation scale, and how you leverage the power and the impact of people to meet business strategies. That's really where I focused almost all my time.
Thank you. And what is it that drives you in your day-to-day work with Cardinal? What when you get up in the morning, what is it that you're really thinking you want to achieve?
It's funny. I said this when I was announced at Leadership Summit 6 years ago that I was coming to Cardinal. Alex asked me that question, and at that point, I had left, really big companies. I had started my own consulting firm. I didn't think I was really going to step back into an organization so quickly, but I just fell in love with this company. And he asked me that, and I said, Alex, I have three young kids at the time. Now, one who's graduated college. My daughter just starts her senior year at CU in Boulder next week, and then my youngest just graduated high school. And I told him, I said, really, what I want to do is I want to create a future of work that I would love to send my kids to, that I'd be excited for them to enter, where they are appreciated and valued, and that they're given opportunities to grow and make an impact.
So tell me a bit about Cardinal Group of companies, about how the business is structured and what sort of assets it is that you operate and where geographically you're working.
Yeah, so we are mainly in student housing. Although we have about 15,000 units in conventional. We're also really stepping into build to rent, BTR structure. But we just surpassed 100,000 student beds earlier this year, and that's definitely been what Cardinal has been known for the most part. And but what we see is that there's kind of a blending of those, and what we want to do is we want to be kind of this alternative housing between student and build to rent and co-living and all these different things that we have learned so many lessons from. And we're a vertically integrated real estate company, so we bring centralization, digital marketing. We have, really strong centralized services as well. So what we try to do is bring the whole suite to the table for both clients as well as our owned assets. And then we just launched development last year as well.
And are you predominantly around the sort of the Texas area, or are you across the whole of the US?
Yeah, we're pretty much in every major market. I think we're currently in 43 states. Obviously with a high concentration in the bigger college markets.
And what is it about the living sectors that you think is really appealing to investors at the moment? Because it does seem to get tremendous interest from investors, both sovereign wealth and pension funds and private equity.
Yeah, I mean, living and housing isn't going away. People are always going to need a place to live, and the demands on what is a good living experience, in particular with the student population, is changing dramatically, and we want to be a part of that. So I think they're really interested in it because it's such a hub for innovation, from a technical perspective, from a workforce perspective. I mean, I just think it's it's such a unique area where there's a lot of growth opportunities, number one. And I think there's amazing humans. It's funny. I've had the pleasure of working in financial services and technology. I've worked in telecommunications, worked in lots of industries, and some of the best people I've ever worked with are in this industry. And so I think there is this strong bent towards how do we take care of our residents, and how do we do that by not just staying stagnant, but staying on the leading edge of what our residents are looking for.
So, what are these innovations you've referred to that are these unique to Cardinal Group, or is this something we're seeing across the sector at the moment?
I mean, I think we're definitely seeing them across the sector. We had AI is the word of the day without a doubt. I in October of this year, I get to deliver a keynote in Paris, and it'll be the first time I speak at a conference where there's a humanoid who is also delivering a speech. And technology is evolving and moving very, very rapidly. There's something known as, Moore's law has been around since the '60s, and Moore's law basically, the pace and speed of technology doubles every 2 to 3 years. Well, yeah, it's right, the processing power. And the CEO of NVIDIA recently talked about this hyper Moore's law that we're in. He said what used to take 3 years is now taking 6 months. He said, so organizations that are doing 3 to 5 year planning, that is actually not 3 to 5 year planning anymore. It's a 6 to 9 month planning. So it's crazy at which the pace has changed. So I think you're seeing a lot of people testing what's happening, but there's also a lot of consolidation of what's going on. So, we're seeing things like self-guided tours. We're seeing predictive preventive maintenance. We're seeing how do you leverage data to understand what customers need and want before they even ask. How do we influence true agentic work, not chatbots and not generative AI, but true agentic work where we have digital teammates who basically have the ability to process and think and go and find data and make decisions that make us more efficient at what we do. So lots going on in the tech space. It's really fascinating every time I get to visit a conference just to see how fast it's evolving.
And is the weight of the AI change that's happening, is it predominantly um, invisible to the student, as namely it being the sort of the way the company's organizing and responding to things? Um, and how does that balance with how the student experience comes across? I mean, will they know now that they've got uh, all these AI bots doing everything behind the scenes?
It's funny, like I mean, you think about it, these students who are really starting to enter into college, they are not just digital natives. They are becoming AI digital natives. Like this has just been a part of how they've operated. So yes and no. I mean, it's their expectations are so different. And I always frame it in I have three Gen Z kids. And I'll be at my house and I'll yell up to my daughter to ask her a question and she'll text me back. She operates in the tech realm. And my middle daughter, when she found a place at Boulder at CU, uh, her and her friends, they sent us links to self-guided tours. They sent us links to the website so we could check it out. Like none of us actually went and visited the place. We did everything virtually. And so it's just such a part of their nature that I don't even think they recognize how different it is from what it was just 5 years ago.
In the news here in the UK this last few days, because we've got the A level results just came out today, which is the exams to go to university, and a lot of students were being given guidance on how to use a telephone to through the clearing system if they haven't got the place they wanted to go and talk to university. And of course, so much of what they've done has been using smartphones, but not the phone element of it. It's been
Yes.
texting it and so on. And seriously, there was examples of folks really not knowing how to structure a conversation on the telephone.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where they've been held back. Then they're massively ahead of people like me, in so many other areas. What's different between what Gen Z are used to and are looking for, and what you think Generation Alpha, who are at school at the moment and will be going to universities shortly. What are their are there different expectations that you can see that are going to be have to met?
Yeah, I think so. First off, Gen Z really they they value authenticity and they value instant access. I mean, there's certain things like that that they value. They're definitely digital natives, less AI natives. I think Gen Alpha has really grown up with this advanced technology that they almost expect that anything that's impossible can be solved. And so to them, it's hard for them to hear answers to questions like, well, you can't do that. Whether it's you can't pay online or you can't access this information from your phone. That's really hard for them. But I think the bigger piece for them is personalization. Why is this? Well, when you think about in terms of how Gen Z grew up searching for information, they grew up looking at Google and they would go in and search and Google would give them optionality and they could actually choose which of the answers. Well, now a lot of these kids, I believe I saw a number that said 38% of Gen Alpha are choosing generative tools like ChatGPT or Gemini for search over Google. And what that does is it doesn't give as much optionality. It actually personalizes information based on you and it gives you a distinct answer. So I think Gen Alpha is looking less for option and more for decision making. Like, you know me, you've learned about me, you understand my needs and who I am. So give me an answer that's personalized to me and doesn't give me optionality.
If it was the case that just going back a few years, I imagine that someone such as yourself would have been trying to bring hospitality sector skills to the fore, to the point where people would be greeting the student by name because they recognized them, and there would be that personal touch that way, and like you
Yeah.
might get at a good quality hotel. Um, how is it working now then? If it's the case that everybody's going to become a bit more reliant on the AI, how are you motivating your and helping your staff to keep that personal touch?
Yeah. Yeah. This is a hard one, Philip. And I think this is what most organizations are struggling with. And this is where we're really trying to press down to say that culture actually really means something. Like, we need teams that are engaged, especially in an era where there is so much question about their future. You know, what does my job look like? Do I have a job in the future? How do I create value and maintain that value? And I really think what we're trying to do is we're trying to share the story that if we do this right, what our technology is going to do is it's going to remove the mundane and the things that are hard. Like, let's use one example. What do our on-site teams, what's our front office on-site teams, what do they not want to do? Collect, right? They don't want to collect because that's an awful conversation to have because many of us have been in situations where, we needed another 3 days to pay rent or whatever it was. And so, like, this collection conversation's awkward. And if we can remove that from their plate through tools that actually do a better job, and we can say, we're gonna take that time that you used to do that and have you instead focus on the wellness, and the engagement of the community that lives there. That's just a better job. And so what we're trying to get our teams to understand is we are not taking things away to take them away. We're taking things away that so we can actually create a better, more fulfilling job where they can interact with the resident in a much higher value capability.
It's really interesting. Now, what are the you mentioned growth as well as innovation. So, what are the main growth opportunities that you see for companies like yours?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think if you're not focused on how do you get innovation and technology skills to your workforce, you're really missing the boat. We have to have digital native team members who understand at a base level how to leverage this technology. That's number one. Number two is connection is really lacking. There was a couple stats. One Glint did that said 53% of the workforce feels invisible. 7 in 10 people are struggling in life currently. There's just a lot of angst. And so to me, one of the great advancements that we're trying to do is to say, how do we build community for our team members? We've launched a coaching and mentorship program that has really taken off. And when I was going back and analyzing why has that been so successful, I think it was just this deep need for community. And it's funny, our company builds community on site, so we can't have team members who don't feel like they're a part of community because you can't teach from a well that's empty. And so if we're not giving our team members community, guess what? They're not going to be able to give to our on-site residents community.
So keeping the staff motivated and feeling part of that community as well is core of what you're trying to achieve on a daily basis.
And Philip, yeah, that's why like this coaching mentorship, that we had 450 people enter that program. It blew me away how many people wanted to be a part of that program. And I think it was because they did want to learn and they wanted to advance. And then we had some of our more experienced leaders who wanted to teach. But I think at its core, what they were really looking for was opportunities to connect.
But what operational initiatives then are being rolled out at the moment? And I'm thinking particularly ones that are aimed at looking at the costs of living increases that we've seen. So many of those items on the that affect the net operational income have gone up in cost.
Yeah.
Um, sure, AI gives you a whole load of opportunities, but could you give us some ideas of some of the initiatives that you're trying to implement across the portfolio?
Yeah, so for sure, one is centralization for us. We have a program called CX3 that we've invested a lot of time in. We have some of our top leaders focused on, and this is really, how do we get better at collections and leasing velocity and some of those functions from groups that have tools at their disposal that help make them more efficient. That's a big one. We're also investing heavily in our resident wellness. Again, we believe that you can have a beautiful place to live, but if you're not in a good place personally, that it's going to be difficult. And so we just announced a $100,000 donation to Hi How Are You, which is a mental wellness coalition here in the States. We believe that part of our job in the future is to help our residents thrive as well. So we're invested in those. Obviously, we're looking at facilities and the future of maintenance and what does that look like. Energy efficiency and then affordability obviously is a conversation that will continue for a long time.
I didn't want to focus too much on the bricks and mortar of
Yeah.
the accommodation, but just a quick thought relating to mental health and wellness. A lot of the student accommodation provided these days is single rooms. So, how are you trying to encourage students to network, to find the community hub? Um,
Yeah.
what is that through things you organize? Is it through design? I'm curious.
Yeah, we have some really great resident programs that our on-site teams put on, as well as some of our regional operations groups. They bring a lot of expertise there. It's it's things as simple as, pizza party on the roof. It's coordinated activities that bring people out of those rooms and together. And again, as a dad of 3 kids, I know how important that is because at our house, it's really easy for everybody to be in one piece of the house and not together. And so you have to be intentional. And so we've been intentional about these resident programs to say, what can we do to pull people out of their rooms and bring them together? I also think the wellness program is part of that. Another element that is going to be a place where people find out about this and are able to connect is through resident apps and informational apps so that they can understand what exactly is going on. How can I get engaged? How can I find the right types of people? We've used tools like RoomSync to make sure that roommates that are living together do have similar interests and it's somebody that they could connect with on an easier basis. So I think tools like that have been really beneficial too.
And how has the university experience changed? And how is it changing? We've heard a lot about more online courses and less space time between the tutors, the academics, and the students, and some dissatisfaction about it not being quite as much an intimate process that it used to be. So,
Yeah.
if you're changing things, for when they're in the accommodation, and that's great. But what are they experiencing when they go to university and on campus?
Yeah, Philip, it's a great question. And again, I experienced this as an executive at a company that does this, but also as a dad who has kids in college. And it's really interesting, to at some points during the semester, my daughter, she's in school about an hour and 10 minutes away from us. So she'll come home and she's home for the week. And I'm like, well, how are you doing this? And she's like, well, I don't have to be in class if I don't need to. Like, I can get notes from friends or I can do it virtually. So I have seen some gaps there across the universities, what they're doing. I think they have started to recognize this. And I think that they're, making efforts to change that. But this is why I think student housing is so primed to just continue to be successful because that's not what universities do great. Like for them, they're educating the youth of the world. And for us, like this is what we do great. So maybe let us do that piece. Let us be the connection piece for your students in a way that is really meaningful. So I like the fact that I don't know that that's the game they need to play in. I think that's really our space to play in.
Interesting, because going back a few years, and I've been involved since the early 90s in the student housing sector from, well, before it was a sector in the UK. And the university residence managers and the accommodation officers,
Yeah.
for all of the view that, hey, look, this is what we do.
Yeah,
Private
no.
sector, just built, terrible, evil people. And you're now saying, well, actually, I'm sure you're not going to criticize universities directly, but you are suggesting that there's a significant part of the welfare aspect is being well handled now by the
Yeah.
operators.
And part of what I'm saying too, Philip, because I was a resident assistant on a floor for 2 years when I was in college. And I loved it and I was good at it. And we had such camaraderie on our floor. But again, it was really tied to where we lived. It was even though we were living on campus, but it was tied to that living experience. And so I think the greatest connection is driven through that living experience. And if we have team members offsite and we can be the vehicle for connection to those people through that living experience, I love that. Because then what's going to happen is you're going to have more fulfilled and happier students going to university and to the classes.
And are you operating accommodation in partnership with universities in some situations? So, do you share responsibilities with universities?
Yeah, we have a couple client partners who have on-campus, housing, and we are much more integrated in those. Those are groups that have master leases and on-campus housing and different elements like that. So we absolutely operate like that a little too.
You touched on this earlier, and you might recall it's an area of great interest to me. How do you see student housing, rented residential, co-living, built to rent? How do you see them becoming more homogeneous? That there's a lot of similarities, and I'm beginning to see some operators, such as you mentioned yourselves, doing student and also doing private rental sector rentals,
Yeah.
and also looking at co-living as well. Although
Yeah.
I say title changes as to what people think that means. Flex is another phrase that's becoming common at the moment, or extended stays, and that quite a lot of. So, are they all sort of merging into one living sector, rented operational sector, or do you think they're always going to be fundamentally different animals?
I mean, I personally think that they're merging together. I think they are becoming a part of like the living map, the journey map of living. And that there are distinct differences in different phases. And, when you're a student and student housing has very specific and unique needs. And when you're in transition housing and maybe, you're going to an apartment or you're building a young family and you want to be in a build to rent type of unit. Or if you're still a young person in an urban core and you can't afford a apartment, a two-bedroom apartment, instead you do co-living and it's smaller spaces that's more affordable. Plus, it might suit kind of your phase of life. So I do see them blending together because again, as I watch my children, I see that they are moving through these cycles of affordability, but lifestyle, kind of what they're looking for and what they need. So I love it. I see it like as this living journey.
Yeah. So, That's the exact word I was about to use, a journey. Do you see the corporate student housing operators wanting to be with these young people through their journey, student accommodation when that's required, possibly co-live next, possibly private rental thereafter? Hey, who knows, even up to the seniors elements as well in a key. I mean, are they taking a journey perspective on this, or is that you and me being a bit romantic about it?
Now, I hope not. I mean, maybe Philip, but I hope not. I I hope it's not just romantic. I because when I think about other elements of my life where I like the connection to something, I think about when hospitality, when I travel. Like, I like staying at Bonvoy hotels because I know what they're like. I know what parts of the city they're in. I know their amenities. I know they know me when I show up. Like, I appreciate that. And I think living could and should be very similar to that.
So to wrap up, really, could you give me your thoughts on what's in store for us in the coming years, perhaps a sort of 5 to 10 year time scale, as to how different the sector might look? What will be the key areas that change if we focus
Yeah.
on particularly?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the game changer is that's going to drive the speed of that change is technology. I mean, we truly are in a unique time in history with what's going on with AI and the advancements around technology. I think that's matching up to the expectations of our residents and some of what they're looking for. So the idea that we can kind of be hesitant there, I think is a misnomer. We can't. We have to be on the front leading edge of that wave to meet the needs of our residents, number one. Number two, then what does that do with the humans inside of our company and the humans who live at our properties? I think it demands that we up level the impact that we make on each other. That we can't see technology as a hindrance to that, but we have to see it as an enabler. And so the question to me is, how do we continue to grow culture inside a company and wellness and make people feel connected? And then transversely, how does that allow us to create new jobs for our on-site residents and deploy new technologies so that they feel heard and seen and taken care of and safe and in a place that values them? I mean, if we do all of those things, we have teams that are engaged and happy, and they transversely can help create living spaces where our residents are fulfilled and happy. And I think technology is not a hindrance to that. I think if you step into it the right way and keep the focus on humans as well, it becomes the edge. And I just launched this internal newsletter called The Edge. And I said, the edge in the future, the competitive edge, is human plus technology. It's those two together.
Well, it's interesting that they do want you to attend in person in Paris, despite the fact that there's going to be some avatar or something there, or some cyber person. Peter, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, as it always is. Thank you so much for joining us and for giving us your time today.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you.